It's Monday. It may be a holiday for you, but we're here working because we don't miss when it's Monday. We're doing Hard Money Monday. This week, super fired up to have Gerald on. We actually met at my meetup like a couple of quarters ago, which is awesome. And so we get to connect today. And we're actually going to make sure, too, that we're going live on Instagram. We'll see you guys there in a second. And, man, honestly, I just want to start off with the story that I know about you, because we haven't really done any deals together. But I do know that you went crazy and bought 27 houses in your first year. And then, if I remember correctly, that was like right before the crash. I don't know if you ended up losing all of those or what happened.
Yeah, it's true. So I got into the business in 2006, and coming straight out of mortgage lending, residential consumer mortgage lending. And I had seen a bunch of my clients that were investors, and I saw their files, and I was like, man, I'm on the wrong end of this real estate thing, right? And so I quickly became an investor. I just made the decision that I was all in because I saw those financials and how well that people were doing. Yep. And so I took every resource that I had and I went all in. I went crazy looking for houses. I even went outside of my local market. Where I started up in Seattle, Washington. That's where I got my first property. And there's actually a cool little story of how I got started, because I got really lucky in the very beginning, and then everything went to bad luck. So on my first deal ever, I met with the seller who was homeless, living in his front yard because his utilities were shut off. And in that area, if you don't have utilities, the health department comes and boards up your house and kicks you out, right?
Because this is Seattle?
Yeah, up in the Seattle area, right? So,
dang, dude.
Because if you can't flush your toilets, then it's a health code violation, right? So,
jeez.
So this guy was living in his car in the front yard during the winter months. And so I made a deal with him. I even gave him cash as earnest money. And then I proceeded to escrow and was like, yes, I got my first deal, right? And so then he calls me about 5 days later and says, hey, man, I'm sorry. I'm not going to be able to sell the house to you because I made a deal with somebody else. And I go, you can't do that. And he's like, well, I did it. And I go, all right, well, just give me the name and phone number of the guy that you did, and I'll work it out with him directly, right? So I end up calling, and the other guy, he gives me his contact information. And it turns out it's an experienced real estate investor. He's a doctor that uses his practice's pension fund to invest in real estate, to buy properties, fix them up, and hold them as rentals, right? And he had amassed over a 15-year period of time, 300 properties in the area. And so he said, well, why don't you just come down to my office and we'll talk about this, we'll work it out. And I said, great. So I came down and met with him, sat across his desk from him. And he starts out just by asking, let me ask you something. How long have you been doing this? And I was all proud. And I said, this is my first deal. You know,
how old were you, by the way?
Let's see, 18 years ago. So I was 30.
30. Gotcha. Okay.
And so I tell him it's my first deal ever. And he just falls back in his chair and starts laughing. And I said, what's so funny? He says, nothing. He goes, look, I'm going to make you the best a deal offer you can't refuse. Okay. He says, I'll pay for everything. We'll use my construction team and everything to do all the rehab. And I normally hold properties as rentals, but on this one, we'll go ahead and put it on the market and sell it. And I'll split the profits with you 50-50. And you can just take notes, pay attention, be present wherever you want so you can learn, and you can ask me questions and I'll answer any question that you have for me in the process. He's all, but only this one time because of the circumstances of the situation. So I was like, oh, yeah, you got yourself a deal, man. And so, we shook on it, wrote it up, and I ended up making $33,000 on that first deal. And I didn't have to do anything other than get the deal under contract, right?
For 2000, that was 2006?
Yeah.
Dude, that is a nice margin for 2006, especially considering basically zero risk for you.
That's right. Dang. So I got all excited, and I took the profits that I made from that deal, my end of the cut of it, And I quickly started looking outside of market just for deals. So I went straight into the Dallas, Texas market, where I bought a couple of properties there and flipped them. Then I went to Las Vegas and picked up 2 houses there. And then I found myself hanging out in the town of Lake Havasu, Arizona, with a bunch of friends. And I made a deal and picked up 12.5 houses there, all in one fell swoop.
Dang, dude, where were you getting the money for this at the time?
Well, all over the place. So I started with the cash that I had from that deal, from mortgage lending that I made, from originations. And then I took the money that I earned from that one deal, and so I rolled those into the next deal. But back then we had I was using hard money as well on top of that. Mm-hmm. And the way they had it structured back then, they had it 100% financing.
Dang, bro.
Because I had great credit. And then also on top of that, they would give you your first draw, right? So, you're basically, back then we were getting paid to buy a house.
Bro, that's crazy.
So it didn't really take a whole lot of out of pocket, to scale very quickly.
Seriously.
But the houses in Lake Havasu in particular, I got from one investor. And I made a deal. She was, didn't know what to do with the property. She ran out of money, this seller. And so I made a deal with her to do a cash for keys deal.
Yeah.
So we had finally negotiated the specific terms of it. We met after hours on a weekend, and I gave her the cash. We met with a notary. She signed all the deeds over, got them notarized, and I held the originals. And it led me to another side note that we can discuss here of why I own properties not in my name. Never in my name.
You're talking about your personal name?
Yes, in my personal name. So back then I bought them. I took these deeds all into my name. And
you had like 27 houses in your name?
Yeah, I did.
Nice.
And so whenever I bought a property, the first thing I would do is I print out a piece of paper that says no trespassing. This property is not for rent or sale. Any questions? And I put my cell phone number, call this number. And I would just tape it up in the front window of every house that I buy. So I did that in Lake Havasu, and the lesson got taught to me as to why I shouldn't own anything in my name. And I quickly took the deeds and I put them in my backpack, and I got on a plane to go back out to Dallas, where I was working on the houses out there. And as soon as the plane landed, I turned my phone on. My phone was blowing up, and I answered it, and it was a Mojave County Sheriff's Department deputy calling. And this is just hours after I put my notice in the window. And he said, "I'm looking for the owner of 123 Main Street."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I can't help you with that unless you tell me what's going on." Right. And he finally, after a little bit back and forth and arguing, he goes, "Fine. First responders responded to a 911 call at this property where 2 kids climbed over the fence, and there's a pool in the backyard.
Yeah.
One of the kids shoved the other kid into the pool, and when he went in, he hit his head on the coping around the side of the pool and was knocked unconscious. Paramedics had to revive the kid on scene, and I'm calling you because the parents are demanding to know who the owner of the property is for liability purposes. They want to tell their attorney who to talk to about."
Man, if only there were a way to limit your liability.
If only there was. By not putting it in your name, right? I was looking at a catastrophe, and instead I just took that one deed and I walked away from it by ripping up that deed.
Really?
Yeah. So it had not been recorded, so I did not own the property yet.
So technically it was the seller who you were buying it from. Wow.
She was on the hook, and she danced out of it at some point by saying, "No, I sold it." And so there was this kind of void in the middle, unrecorded sale that nothing ever came of it. But
that's so wild, dude. Yeah, I might have got sued, so I was just like, this deed, bro, I'm ripping it up before it's recorded.
I told, "Sorry, crazy. I can't help you. I don't know who the property owner is. Thank you. Have a nice day. Good luck." And hung up. and nothing ever came of it ever again, right? But I learned that lesson then, and I felt a pretty important lesson.
Dang, dude, that's crazy. Okay, so at that point, I mean, let's be clear here. You're buying everything in your personal name in a matter of basically a year and a half, 2 years. You've taken title to like 27 properties without really putting up a ton of your own money because hard money lenders are basically paying you to buy houses.
Yeah.
Like, probably safe to say that you were overextended. So what ended up happening when the market shifted?
So picking up those properties in Lake Havasu was what did me in. I had overall so I bought 27 properties in my first year, all within 12 months in 4 different states. And so I was just flying all over the place. And the properties in Lake Havasu, when I bought, that took my my equitable worth to 1.7 million that I had
Dang, bro.
in 1 year. And so I took all the cash I had, which is probably about $500,000 in cash.
Yeah.
And I started spending it on improvements on all these properties because I was like, yes, I'm going to fix them all up, and I'm going to take that 1.7 to like 2.5, and then I'll sell them all, and yay, right? Well, the market had something else in store for me. I spent all my, probably about more than half of that cash on fixing up the properties. And then the market crashed. You know, the subprime mortgage market, the bottom fell out. 300 different subprime lenders all closed their doors all simultaneously, going into bankruptcy, and liquidity was not a thing anymore, right? And so all of a sudden nobody's borrowing, which means nobody's buying, nobody's selling, and everything went really bad. So I went from that 1.7 million and having 500,000 cash to being underwater almost $1 million.
Yeah. Were you, by the way, at this point in time, were you still slinging loans as well, or had you stepped away from the mortgage industry?
Yeah, I stepped away when I got fully committed into being an investor. So I
was going to say, dude, ripping mortgages while working on 27 houses, I'm like, that would be crazy.
Yeah, it was already enough work doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would had the bandwidth for anything else.
So you have like 250K left in the bank account.
Yeah.
Basically, market takes a dump. Were you on like a 6-month or 12-month note with your hard money lenders on all of these, or what was your financing
so we're getting extensions. We're servicing, the loan payments on everything, including all of the big portfolio of properties in Lake Havasu. I took them over subject to, right? So
did you really?
They were conventional loans, with decent interest rates and payments on them. But when you've got properties, I mean, even the market fell out so hard, it actually dumped the rental market as well, right? So properties that were pulling in $2,000 a month, all of a sudden are only bringing in $1,500. Because inventory went through the roof, right?
Yeah.
For rentals, for properties for sale, everything.
That's crazy, because one of the things, this is especially something that like bigger pockets that I always talk about. They're like, oh, well, the 2008 crash, it hurt prices, but rents never dipped. Like, man, I feel like maybe on a national average, but Arizona is one of those states in particular that always seems to get smacked with any corrections. 2008, even spring 2022, Arizona seemed to have gotten hit as hard as any other market. I'm probably similar to Florida too, right? Like, I don't know what it is about these southern, I guess, more vacation states, I guess.
Yes.
But yeah, that's wild, dude.
Higher end luxury properties got hurt first. Resort towns like Lake Havasu and Las Vegas, where I was holding those properties, it's true that more stable markets probably didn't get affected as much, but I wasn't thinking those other markets, right? So,
right. Yeah, you were not in the Midwest. So on these sub 2, like the whole portfolio was sub 2. So did you have long-term financing on the Lake Havasu properties then?
Yes. But what ended up happening was that over time, not being able to fill the rentals, for a rate that I needed to cover it.
Yeah.
All those properties ended up bleeding me to death cash wise.
Dang.
So I serviced all the loans as long as I could going until I late 2008. And then the death of 1,000 paper cuts started hitting, right? Where you're getting default, and it just couldn't, there was nothing that anybody could do. And anybody that was in the business back then that was leveraging hard, like I was, they got hurt. Everybody got hurt. Everybody I know that was in the business back then got hurt.
Yeah.
So
did you end up losing all of them?
Yeah. Over time, I held on and scraped and scratched at it defended some of the, the foreclosure cases and everything. But at the end of the day, I just start giving them back, this is a good segue, for another lesson that was learned.
Yeah.
Right. And because at that point, number one, nobody was lending. That was part of the problem, right? It's not like I could just go and get another loan to cash out and, so the equities were down because nobody was lending, right? Even if you had great credit score and great assets, they weren't lending. They closed all their doors and closed their books. So it forced me to learn about private lending.
So if you don't mind me asking too, Gerald, you were making all your money from flipping houses. Then you have to stop flipping houses. Like, what are you doing for income at that time? Like,
so
I know there wasn't a lot of jobs either.
Yeah, no, the game then shifted from flipping houses for resale to keeping them.
Yeah.
Foreclosure, right? Defending. And so
full-time job of trying to lose less money.
Right. Full-time, just to stop the bleeding. That was a full-time effort, and it required some legal, maneuvers and judicial jujitsu, just to be able to hold on to it. So because the rental rates were down, and in many of my properties, they were less than what the cost of servicing the loan was each month. So it didn't cover the nut. I had to get creative with that too. And one of the things that myself and a bunch of others did was back then they called it house hacking. Nowadays they've got a company called Pad Split that, that kind of has kind of coined that term for it. But essentially what you're doing is you're maximizing the occupancy of a single family residence. So essentially turning it into kind of a multifamily without all the amenities. So you rent out each bedroom. I would even take, I had larger square foot properties that had a big living room and a big dining room. And we just walled them up and converted those into additional bedrooms so that a house that was normally only bringing in $1,500 a month was now bringing in, $2,500 a month.
Dang, that's crazy.
Right.
So even after all of this, you didn't want to be like, all right, I get it. I'm done with house flipping. Like, this sucks. You were bound and determined to stay in the game and figure out how to get money elsewhere.
Yeah, I was obsessed and addicted, and I felt like like what I would imagine that a gambler feels like. I've never been big into casinos or gambling, but I understand the mentality because I've had some friends that have been to it, to where the more money that they lose, the more compelled they feel to win it back. And so I don't know. I guess I felt like I became hard-headed in that sense because I didn't want to give up. I felt like I had dedicated too much time, energy, money, to real estate in general, and that if others can figure it out, so could I. And so that's exactly what happened, is that instead of traditional lending or hard money lending, we found others out there that had capital and cash that needed to find a way to get a return on their money that was secure, number one. And, there's issues with the stock market and other investment types of vehicles out there as far as security, but then also on the return, So if you've got, like, right now, nowadays, here in 2025, we're still facing inflation as a problem. And depending upon who's measuring it, they'll report it being between 5% and 7% annually. And then, if you factor in from other people, all what they're reporting back is that their costs increasing and how much on other, commodities and such, we're talking double digit, inflation numbers, right? So if your money is just sitting there, let's say in a CD, right, with a bank where it's locked up, and you're only getting 4 to 5% return on it, and
Yep.
inflation's eating away double digits at that. I mean, you're losing money every year. And
Oh
so
yeah.
this, and so even though we're facing this still here in 2025, that was very much a problem back then as well.
Yep.
And so you
Yeah.
got people that are fighting to keep their money, right? Just like I
Yep.
was.
Yeah. Yep. I think too, like I mean, dude, I was a kid in 2008, right? Like I was 10 years old. Um, but I think one thing that's good to keep in mind, it's like, okay, who would ever lend on real estate after just seeing that whole market fall out? Like, well, if you had your money with a financial advisor at that time or pretty much anywhere else, except maybe like gold or something, which doesn't really have great annualized returns to begin with, like everybody lost. There was nobody who was like, unless you shorted the market or whatever, it's like it didn't really matter where your money was at. Um, so I have to imagine that everybody was just like, dude, like everybody got spanked, Nobody was didn't matter what asset class you're in. It seemed like it was just L's across the board.
That's right. Mutual funds, stock market, all of that. Everybody took a hit. And it was for not just a short term, correction, right? This is something that lasted for a good 3 to 4 years.
Yep.
For there was like a real measurable recovery, right?
Yep.
So some people put a different date on it, but I think pretty much everybody that's been in the business can say that from 2012 on, things have been recovered, right?
Yep.
So there wasn't that issue, but there was a really stagnant, feeling in the air definitely from 2008 till like 2011.
Yep.
Where things were just difficult, right?
Yep.
All across the board.
So what kind of objections did you get from people who are, potentially good fits to lend on deals? And if there wasn't financing on the backside, how did you make people feel good about somebody being able to buy the flip or rent the house after it was all said and done?
Well, the good news is that even though the market wasn't appreciating or increasing, the correction and loss really kind of happened within that first year. So 2009, definitely by 2010-ish, we weren't seeing like more declines in the market. It had all kind of shaken out by then.
Yeah. So it's stable.
Yeah, it stabilized in like 2010. But there wasn't any real increase in equities until measurably until like 2012, right? So
yeah.
So
literally the best time ever to invest.
What's that?
Like the best time ever to invest, maybe in the history of the U.S. 2012.
Yeah, from like 2012 to 2017.
Yeah,
was a nice bull run for everybody that was in it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So the argument was not, hey, there's going to be plenty of new equity other than forced appreciation through improvements. But it was more about, hey, look, you're going to be safe because we're using conservative numbers on this. But also, by leveraging some of the existing financing that was in place, or the proposal being that we're going to keep and cash flow the property as opposed to resale, those became sufficient as far as confidence for investors to invest in it.
Yeah, having the multiple exit strategies. So you're probably not flipping luxury properties at this time.
No.
Yeah. Gerald, since you used private money or hard money back when they were slinging it at over 100% cost, and then you've used a bunch of private money, what have been like? Do you like one over the other? Why? What are pros and cons of each?
Well, let's be clear, right? Like hard money itself has a great benefit to investors, right? The biggest benefit is speed.
Yep.
Right? And sometimes that's what matters when you're getting a good deal on a property.
Sure.
And so I would definitely encourage investors to always consider hard money. However, in the long run, in the long game of things, private money, and I guess let's start by defining two different ideas about private money, right?
Yep.
There's your professional private money lenders out there, right? That's what they do for a living. They don't do anything else. And they are sharks about analyzing the deal and shaking out the deal and making sure that everything fits within their box that they're comfortable lending in. And if it's not, then they just say no and move on, right? So sometimes that can be a little more rigid and almost similar to hard money, right? But in my experience, private money is, for me, has just been individuals, right? That are not professional. That's not what they do for a living. A lot of them are W-2 earners, or they own a business. They have some retirement funds set aside that they're not satisfied with the returns that their broker's getting for them on it. Or they see the writing on the wall with the stock market that, hey, sooner or later it's going to correct itself, and then I don't want to lose money. And so they're looking for security, but they're also looking to offset inflation. And so those types, I love, because it's so much less rigid. Number one, you're not filling out an application.
They trust you to do the due diligence on the deal.
That's right. It's a relationship based thing. And so once you establish that relationship and that trust, then it's a matter of, to do a deal, you're essentially sitting down for dinner and just, reviewing some of the particulars with it. And if it sounds good to them, then you shake hands on the deal and then follow up with work, days to wrap it up. But the experience overall, and for me, being able to help someone else win, right, as opposed to some institution or some professional that's used to winning already, that makes it more valuable to me to have relationships like that we build.
I agree 100%, especially on the idea of there are really two types of private lenders. My experience personally is that, like, the folks that you defined first, the professional private lenders, they're usually considerably more expensive than hard money. Now, what's great about them is they'll just, they can stroke checks themselves. They can be really, really quick. They know if it's a deal or not that they like right away. They're usually pretty expensive. I find that hard money is kind of in the middle, right? Usually cheaper, but there's going to be more hoops to jump through overall, but maybe more flexible on some things. And then you get the real private money, and it's a long play. To your point, you don't just call people up and get that. It's usually relationships that are established, people who have been watching you for a long time. But those are the types of people that can be really happy to give you 10% 0 points and say, hey, go out and find a great opportunity to secure this with, because I would much rather get 10% backed by an actual asset than hope for 10% and be paying all these broker fees on, my stocks and everything like that, which is basically giving money to some Fortune 500 company, some manager that I've never met before in my life. I would trust you to go out and get the same returns and make it predictable.
Well said.
It's almost like I do these podcasts all the time, man. I get we'll cut that one out as a clip. I'm sure I'll reuse it. Okay. But since we're coming up on time here, man, this one's gone really quick. So, been using private money. What about, I know in the past couple of years you've gotten really into the AI space in real estate. When people say AI, man, that can mean like 100 different things. So what in particular are you doing with AI in real estate, and like, how is it helpful?
Yeah, most people's experience with artificial intelligence, AI, stems from like the creative side, or basically a substitute from Googling, right? Something. So they use it for the intelligence of learning something. But in real estate, we early on, a close friend of mine, right after ChatGPT came out, shortly after, he was a programmer, and he contacted me and said, hey, bro, I've got this, I figured something out. I coded how to connect SMS messaging to ChatGPT so that we can have it manage our conversations for us. And that turned out to be amazing. Then months later, voice AI became available to us.
Yeah, I remember that.
And first of all, in real estate, there's a couple different sides to it. You've got your acquisition side, and then you've got your disposition side, especially if you're someone that's a wholesaler or a real estate agent. So those are two different animals, kind of types of conversations to have. But both of them require or are subject to what we call the Amazon Prime effect, right? Like as consumers, we're all now conditioned to get everything that we want instantly like that.
Yep.
Right? Whether it's a 2-day delivery on an order, or if it's instant download streaming, of videos that we can watch, even watching things live right now, as opposed to, watching a recording or even getting a DVD or something, right?
Oh,
Redbox is out of business just the same as Blockbuster, right? Because of this effect. And so they've done studies, and what they've found is that as consumers, we actually we want everything so instant that we only have a patience threshold of 4 minutes before we become impatient and decide to move on to the next provider or business, right? So this translates in real estate to when a seller is calling, that's interested in or considering selling their property, we have to answer that call at the time that they're contacting us. Otherwise, that might be a missed opportunity. And if we're spending money marketing and advertising to get the phone to ring, and let's say we're on the other line with somebody else, or we're in an appointment, or we're on a podcast like this right now, I'm not going to be answering my phone in the middle of this. So who's going to, right? And in the past, we've had virtual assistants over in the Philippines. We've had domestic here in the U.S. call centers, 30-seat call centers where you got people standing by, and it was expensive. Both of them, even virtual assistants where they're working for $5, $6, $7 an hour. It's still expensive compared to this technology. And so they have a saying that is going around that AI is not going to replace humans, but humans with AI will replace humans without AI. Because it gives us such a competitive edge now, right? So instead of someone calling me and getting my voicemail, and then they don't leave a message, and then I call them back because it was a missed call, and then I get their voicemail, or I get even worse, that this voicemail box has not been set up yet, or this voicemail box is full. The fact is that most people are not using voicemail anymore. It's become antiquated and nobody's using it. And so then it's the same thing with text messaging or emails or messaging on Instagram or Facebook, to where we all expect instant replies. Right? And if somebody doesn't, then we move on. And in our experience in real estate, we found that if we are not responsive immediately with sellers, especially in particular, that we miss that connection, and we usually miss it forever. The fact of the matter is that real estate itself, buying and selling, is a event stimulated event, right? So it's not like we when we're at the grocery store and we decide to grab a Snickers on the way out, right? Buying a house and selling a house is not akin to that. Instead, there's some sort of an event that usually takes place to stimulate that. And most of the time, it's either that somebody was born or somebody died, somebody got a new job, someone lost their job, right? Someone's getting married, someone's getting divorced. So it's usually these life events that stimulate the decision, to sell and then to buy ultimately. So when that takes place, and then somebody is stimulated to do something about it, right? Typically they want to handle it right now. And they're going to call around and reach out to people until they get somebody that's going to take the time and talk to them about it. And they'll usually, statistically, they'll do business with that first person that takes the time to listen to them and hear them out and talk to them about the situation.
Yeah, those are like the best calls ever, man. When a seller calls you up and they're just pissed about something. Like, I just got a call from my tenant. This thing broke. The house is leaking water right now. Like, I'm done. You need to buy it instantly. And to your point, if you're not the person to pick up that phone call, and the person second in line or third in line is the one to pick up the phone call, like, dude, they're highly emotional. They're ready to make a commitment right now. Even 5 minutes from now, that might not be the time they're willing to put pen to paper, right?
But they want the connection. They want somebody, they want to be heard.
Correct.
And when somebody tells us about their situation, that instills trust. That's how trust and rapport is built. It's by the sharing of information. And so even if we don't get them to put pen to paper right there on that first phone call, we've at least established that relationship, that rapport, that trust with them for follow-up, And so the key difference in using artificial intelligence in real estate is that it gives us that advantage. So never do we have, we don't use voicemail anymore, right? And when we send traffic to a website, we're not expecting them to fill out a form and one of us will get back to you as soon as possible. We have a live chat widget that can talk to them 24 hours a day, right then and there. And the conversation is not a copy paste, type of autoresponder, of the past that we used to have. It's generative, right? So the AI is taking input, taking the training, prompting, and scripting that we've provided it, how to respond and what its goals and objectives are. And it's thinking about each and every response on how to respond. And then it's doing so in real time.
It's awesome, man.
And so even if you were to have one virtual assistant in the Philippines that worked part-time, that is subject to getting sick, showing up late, leaving early, taking breaks, having a bad day, right? One VA part-time, $5, $6, $7 an hour, still it costs way more than having one artificial intelligence bot to handle your acquisitions on this, right? And so now it's almost that if you're in real estate, you almost cannot afford to be without this, because even if you want to stay in the loop and answer your phone, you can set this to where the AI will pick up all of your missed calls. Right? So it can just kind of replace voicemail. So it has that conversation in real time, capturing that information, getting it into your CRM, and then even automating some of the follow-up so that you have all these other at-bats. And when we had a team, a year and a half ago, we had a call center where we had a ton of humans there domestically here in the US. And they were subject to a bad phone call, right? So some of them, we were having them follow up on older leads and some cold leads as well. And they would get somebody that says, "Oh, I hate you," type of people. "Don't call me ever again. Take me off your list." Or and they would feel bad, right? And then they would feel intimidated about picking up the phone and making the next phone call, right? But artificial intelligence is not affected or jaded by any of that, right? Somebody can tell it, to go away essentially, and it will just move right on to the next one with the same energy and emphasis that it did on the previous call.
Dude, this is a pretty funny side note, but one of my buddies had, he was doing like the AI calling, but the rules with this bot is like, it couldn't end the call. The seller had to end the call. They would record all of these, dude. And one of them was so funny. The seller was just cussing out the AI bot, like nonetheless. It was like, "How stupid are you? Don't you know to hang up the phone?" But the AI couldn't hang up the phone, was just like, "I'm so sorry. Like, let me know how I can help you." And he's like, "You can't help me. Just hang up the effing phone." And it went on like that for like 2 minutes. It was so funny. Yeah, AI bots don't care. Like, they'll just keep going on to the next.
That's right. And so when we use it in this way, and we even have it set appointments for follow-up, now when one of our closers or our humans gets involved in the conversation, it's a pleasure, right? And so now we've got our closers that perform better because they're not having all these bad experiences. Right? They're not getting jaded in their head, or their confidence is not being attacked. Each time they get on the phone, it's a good experience, and so they're looking forward to the next phone call and the next phone call, and including in-person meetings too, right? So,
yeah. And if someone is listening in as a wholesaler, realtor, investor, whatever, and they want to learn more about how do you actually use AI, how do you implement that in your business, like, should they reach out to you? And if so, where's the best place to reach you?
Yeah, so we definitely, since then, we have created an agency that helps businesses, especially those in real estate, because the key is the training of this AI, right? So there's a lot that goes into it, especially understanding the script, prompts, the training, the goals and objectives on how we teach it to interact. We figured a lot of that out, right? Especially the psychology of a seller, of what sort of questions we want to know. We want to know, what is the motivation? We don't just care about the price and condition of the property. We want to know, why are you selling? We want to be able to
Yep.
ask that in a few different ways. And so we created an agency that helps those in real estate, whether you're an agent or you're in the mortgage business or you're a wholesaler or you're just buying or selling. We can help you out with everything A to Z on it. And you can reach out to us at techtasia.com.
Techtasia. How do you spell that?
TECHTASIA.com.
SIA. Got it. Techtasia.com. Well, there you go. There you have it. Well, we are coming up on time, man. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on, Gerald. I guess if for folks that are listening in, would you have any final piece of advice for people investing in 2025?
Yeah, never give up. Especially this last year was a tough year, 2024. They statistically they say it was one of the worst years for real estate since 1995, as far as volume of transactions, right? So a lot of real estate professionals are kind of hurting right now, but there's hope, especially with the regime change, the administration change that's actually taking place today.
Oh yeah, it is, isn't it?
There's a lot of hope in the air that things are going to get better in the real estate business. You see, with interest rates, that affects a lot of things for folks. There's a lot less people selling, and that should change. So if you're kind of sitting on the sidelines, get ready to get in the game. Lace up your shoes. Now is the time to get that pipeline filled up again of folks that you can help. And that's the biggest thing in real estate too, is that you're only as valuable as you can help somebody.
Yep.
And as a wholesaler, we teach this time to other wholesalers that if you can't offer some piece of bona fide assistance to a seller, then there's no opportunity there, right?
Yep.
So if somebody has a perfect property, has no issues, they're not in a rush, they could just go to an agent and sell it on the market and get top dollar, right?
Yep.
But if somebody has a situation that they need some help with, this is where the opportunity is for you to step in and provide that help. So always approach people from how you can help them. And there will always be a piece on the side there for you as leftovers, right? And if you approach it that way, you'll have great success in this business.
There you go. Love it, man. Get ready to thrive in 2025 by helping sellers out with real solutions. So thank you all for tuning in to this week's episode of Hard Money Monday, and we will be back next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, Jared.